Why do I get the distinct feeling that you're going to teach her how to disassemble a body? We opened this week with the Tropical Club being interviewed for their school paper. As it turned out, their booth at the cultural festival managed to rank second overall. However, they soon got something for a more paranormal headliner. Again, y'all are being way too blatant with your product placement. Granted, they would be even more blatant by the end of the scene, but I'm more distracted by Asuka here.
If you don't stop making that face, it'll freeze that way!
But yeah, believe it or not, this would become a plot point later. And after the opening, that hopefully will be changed by next week to match up with this week's developments, we cut over to the lair of the witch, who was having dreams about a mysterious blonde girl. Fate hides, you started to remember about Alicia! Butler came in to check on her and oh jeez, already? The Zeta Yangire have only been around for 7 episodes. Okay, I gotta know. How many types of this one monster of the week do we have so far? Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4! 4 types and we're not even into the 30s yet. Y'all should have almost as many monster types as the Akambe when you've barely done anything with them. But yeah, putting aside the revolving door of cannon fodder, I do at least kind of like this scene for the symbolism using mirrors, which, spoilers, are going to be a little important throughout this episode. In this case, this broken mirror was likely foreshadowing more of Butler's true role in the show, with his voice sounding a lot more devious on this last word. The mirror theme was followed up with the scene of Manatsu pulling a Miyuki and summarizing classic fairy tales by bringing up magic mirrors like the one in Snow White.
Just f*** already!
But yeah, obvious foreshadowing was obvious. From there, we quickly cut over to Butler unleashing the new Yaneda, and just as quickly we cut back to Manatsu. Yeah, you can tell this episode was written by the head writer who really needed to get the show back on track. Anyway, our main heroine was having a bit of a trippy dream sequence where we got this little bit of amazing animation of Laura circling her. FYI, this was just an appetizer of what was to come in this episode. But yeah, she saw what was apparently a legendary Precure, which I'm not even gonna try to count how many of those we've gotten in this franchise. And the next day, Laura confirmed that there was such a character in mermaid mythology who fought an evil witch, though interestingly, she couldn't confirm whether or not she was referring to the witch they were currently dealing with. But those speculations would have to be sidelined for... Well, that's a walking lawsuit if I've ever seen one. Granted, I guess they could get away with it by having a ton of variations of this one monster, as it appeared all over the city, forcing the Precure to deal with them individually. Thus, after not doing an out-of-nowhere group transformation like last week, we got the first of this week's amazing fight sequences, which, yeah, I may as well talk about the production behind it. A friend and I actually thought that this animation was being directed by Kotai Watanabe, you know, the guy who gave us some of the best animated episodes of Hakuto, but no, as it turned out, it was a first-time director by the name of Keisuke Mori. Though, to be fair, we weren't too far off, as he did provide key animation for both of Watanabe's episodes. I'd imagine they were specifically paired up because, really, their styles are just so similar. In fact, looking through his portfolio on Sakugaboru, where he's called Masami Mori for whatever reason, he has done some amazing work, which makes you question why is it taking them this long to give him his first directorial work? I mean, okay, I can't imagine this stuff comes cheap, as he tends to focus a lot more on the movement of the characters. He tends to make his action sequences like something out of a tokusatsu with less bad effects. This means a lot less cuts than normal, and make it look like an actual camera was following them around, resulting in some very dynamic sequences. Granted, by holding onto the characters for so long, errors like off models are more visible, but also understandable because some of this must be murder on the animator's drawing hands. It's a bit of a trade-off. You can either have some super smooth animation with some gangly proportioned characters, or some more proportionate characters with some boring as all hell and stiff animation. And while I do kind of want more consistency, hence why I'll say Watanabe is just a little superior, I can also understand Mori's approach and really appreciate him more than, say, an old dog who doesn't learn new tricks. to give the animators a little bit of a break, we cut over to the generals on their break. As usual, Elda was complaining about serving the witch, especially now that she was so grumpy, and asking where all of the motivation energy was. Though apparently, she and the other villains weren't allowed to just tell her that the Precure were getting in their way.
なんで魔女様の前でプリキュアって言葉は禁句なのかしら。
I don't know, maybe because they killed her husband twice. Back with Manatsu, she remembered what she had told their seal friend earlier in the episode, and I guess they just left them in the club overnight. Yeah, that's just plain neglect on y'all's part. That said, at least it led to the absolute best sequence in this whole episode. Yeah, you know, I could care less about the stupid power-up at this point. Can we just get more amazing sequences like this, please? I mean, sure, we're gonna get an epic final battle sequence near the end of this, but I honestly find this much more impressive since they're fighting in the confined spaces of the tiny club room, as opposed to some wide open spaces where they could move to whatever spot they wanted to. Most impressively, there was only one cut throughout this whole sequence, while everything else relied on some very impressive shifting angles where we got to see a consistent layout of the club room. That is some attention to detail, great stuff. Anyway, after this little bit that actually makes me laugh more than anything, Manatsu found herself in some familiar peril. Fortunately, Kurun managed to get away, and after Minori got on PETA's blacklist, they learned what had happened to their leader. What's that? She fell down a well. Wait, what's a well doing in the middle of the city? Fortunately, I guess the new Super Yaneda did a half-assed job, as Manatsu still had a little motivation left over. I mean, I guess she's built up more over the course of the series, but come on dude, do your job. Anyway, her friends rushed to the school, with the rest of the slime army following close behind. During the chase, they managed to connect Laura's mirror with the dresser, which no, it wasn't the power-up item just yet, but I guess since they talked about magic mirrors earlier, they can just do this now. Well, whatever, it's a little forced, but not a big deal, at least compared to this thing. Little did they know, that's just the monster's tongue. Anyway, after some Final Fantasy X sliding, they managed to reach Manatsu, and even transferred some of their motivation through the mirrors. Toy, we get it. Y'all are jealous of Super Riot and Ultraman, so stop trying to steal from them. With the team back together, it was time for some good old Musou fighting. And again, in spite of them turning into magical girl versions of the Slender Man, these were still some very impressive sequences. Again, I still think the clubroom scene was better because of the dynamic angles in an enclosed space, but hey, at least Minori's eye beams look cool here after they barely heard a seal earlier. Of course, Laura used her finisher, but as usual with the show, the old finisher had to get tossed aside for the new one. Thus, the dresser changed, and as hinted earlier, the legendary Precure arrived, and what is that on her head? Leviathan, I'm not sure if you realize this, but the Alolan Executor haircut, that's not exactly in. But yeah, she was voiced by Mai Nakahara, best known for playing Tiana Lannister, Mifuyu Azusa, Nagisa Furukawa, and as I hinted at the beginning, Rena Ryugu. And with that, all of the Higurashi girls have now technically been Precure at some point, which unfortunately also includes Sadako. Well, nothing against Pecorine, I've gotten over that little marshmallow. I just really did not like this little brat after Sotsu. And yeah, I think I'll try to find time to talk about this at some point. Anyway, time for a form change and finisher, and again, I think they're just okay. I don't know, maybe it's because their base forms are already so well designed that adding to them is a little unnecessary, especially if it's just adding more white on like in Manatsu's case. Honestly, I think I prefer her Berserker upgrade. Again, it's not bad, and I do like some of the additions here, like Minori getting some more Saiyan hair, though good lord, Sango's gonna have a hard time moving around with those things on her head. Though on that note, I do question, why are they not wearing footwear? I mean, I think I kind of get it, it's all part of the easygoing island lifestyle, but it's still gonna hurt when you move around to fight. But, oh well, I guess it's just for this attack. I mean, it's not as though they're gonna need shoes to tap dance, but wait, how can they make the tapping sounds if they're not wearing any shoes? Also, why is there a pink elephant? And what do pink elephants even have to do with tropicalness? And why is he performing a rider kick?
The answer is don't think about it.
Good God, I've needed to use that clip a lot this season, haven't I? Also, I'm just realizing this while editing, but Kamen Rider Revice, aka Laura's brothers, also got an elephant finisher this week.
Coincidence? I think not!
But anyway, after some more of Butler's foreboding creepy voice, we got some interesting foreshadowing with the witch possibly being connected with the legendary cure. And with that, the episode just kind of ended with Manatsu showing off their new toy. A little rushed, but hey, may as well land on a high note. Wow, this episode just kind of flew by, which I do mean in the best ways for the most part. If anything, it meant that we could get to some of those amazingly well-animated sequences sooner, and while I will say Mori is not quite as good as his Watanabe-senpai, he's still a fairly top-tier animation director for this franchise, and considering this was his first time in the director seat, he really knocked it out of the park. Yeah, so the story here was just a little too fast-paced, but I consider that to be more indicative of the show's overall plot, and at the very least, we are getting some interesting developments, so hopefully at least the witch's plot will wrap up satisfyingly. I think I've said all I can about the amazing animation in this episode, so instead, I'll just point out some of the more interesting storytelling here, which, yeah, was dished out pretty quick in this one. Again, not really a fault of this episode itself, just kind of a byproduct of this show's lack of focus on the main plot, especially involving the Witch of Procrastination. And while I'm still not totally sold on her as a villain, I'm at least intrigued by some of these developments. It's clear that broken mirrors are significant to her, possibly to symbolize her denial of reality. Maybe she's not comfortable in her monstrous form, and there's something hiding underneath her and Butler, whose voice cracks were very noticeable in this one. Obviously, she has some connection with the legendary cure, with her either being her daughter, or, and I think this is a lot more likely, she is the cure, and maybe this is her level 5 status. It would certainly explain the ambiguity of Laura's telling of her race's legends, and the villains being forbidden from even talking about the current team. Thus, overall, while there wasn't much new to talk about regarding our actual main characters, they're still a good team who work well together. These new developments for the witch do at least have my attention. Combine that with some excellent animation and a bizarre new finisher to say the least, and you get a must-watch for the season. Though seriously, why am I seeing so many pink elephants? Believe it or not, I actually managed to finish part 2 of my latest Toy Trinity series within just a few weeks. Honestly, I'm having a hard time believing I managed to edit that 40-minute monster. Nah, but seriously, I enjoyed making it, as I managed to share what I think makes her a great protagonist in shows like Precure, Kamen Rider, and Super Sentai. Do take note though, these aren't necessarily my personal favorites of each franchise. I mean, I do still like these characters, but a personal favorites list is best saved for another day. For now though, do look forward to the final part of my Gold Princess reviews coming soon. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I gotta start cutting back on this stuff before I see any more of those bastards.
What'll I do? What'll I do?
Don't hear them, don't hear them, don't hear them.
エモーショナルエンジンフルトライブ